Okay, so let's transition into the fire service in the United States and um, that process. I mean, I'm very naive to maybe coming to America to go into a service like the fire service or law enforcement. I may have met two folks, maybe in my years that were not born and raised here in America that became police officers or firefighters. Talk about that. I mean, you obviously already had experience, but maybe you can compare and contrast like the entry into this and kind of what it looks and feels like maybe culturally as compared to other places, because I've never heard anybody talk about that.
So there are some barriers to entry when you first come over here. The legal way, and again, I'll preface that with I came from a country where I had the environment and the means to legally move to America. I wasn't fleeing Haiti or somewhere, so that's not in any way, shape, or form me judging anyone who doesn't come that way. But it's expensive and it's a very long process. And when I went through, so I was emigrating in 2002, so not long after 9/11. So you imagine all the bureaucracy that are built up then.
Things had changed.
Yeah. So I went through Fire Academy, graduated, but some departments like the City of Orlando, you had to be an actual American citizen. A lot of departments, if you were a permanent resident, they would take you. I think the law enforcement side, you have to be a citizen specifically. So that's a difference. That's a nuance between an immigrant and someone that was born and bred here. But apart from that, it's the same exact process. It really is. I mean, there's pros and cons. Like culturally, using north, south, east, and west, we don't do that in England. It exists, of course, but our roads are like a bowl of spaghetti. So if you said go north on this one, you would for about 20 meters. Now you're going south, and now you go. You know what I mean? So that's
a navigation. Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cultural things where it was more challenging being from another country. But then conversely, you bring in a cultural skill set that, some people in the department don't have. So for example, a lot of people speak Spanish in America. Well, I come from a country where French is our second language. And I say second, it's what we're taught in school. I'm not fluent. But so when I worked in the Haitian neighborhoods, that was super helpful. And then the last place I worked, Protected Disney World, that we had a lot of English tourists. So I literally had times where they said, I can't understand a word he's saying. Can you get in the back and translate for me? And he was English. So you've got, there's the pros and the cons. But I mean, that once you have the documentation here, especially if you get your citizenship, which takes a few years, then you're pretty much the same as everyone else.
Can you compare and contrast like the quals just with regard to what your prerequisites would be, or in even like what Academy of Life and the requirements are like in America versus somewhere else?
Yeah, so I know a lot of other countries, and it's interesting because there's a real diverse spectrum. Like Germany, firefighting is almost like a degree program, and I think some of the Northern Europe and Eastern European countries, I think if I've got this right, you almost do like an academic test, and they place these kids. Okay, you can do just this series of jobs. So the German ones are a very, very academic, intense course that they do. The UK is more like New York, where everyone comes in as a regular citizen, and they train you from zero through. And I'm not super well versed in the British fire service because I didn't really actually get to enter the fire service till we got here. What's unique about the rest of America, though, is that most of us, especially when I was testing back in 03, 04, you basically put yourself through everything, out of pocket. So you will put yourself through, in Florida, what I know, we went to EMT school, and I went part-time because I was, working to support myself, my family while I was going through. So I went to EMT school for 3 months, nights and weekends, and then fire school was 6 months. And so then you have those certs, and then you start applying. And now, as time's gone on, there's more departments that will do it with no qualifications. But, it's interesting. I don't know if we touched on this when we spoke, but I've talked to a lot of guys that came on around my era or before. And like, for example, in California, I tested against 1,000 candidates in 2005, 04, to go to California, Anaheim. And each of those candidates was already a firefighter, already a paramedic or EMT, A lot of them had worked in other fire departments already. They'd volunteered. They'd been the Explorer program. They worked on ambulances. Like they had a resume, and there was 1,000 of these guys, and a few women. And again, the diversity issue. That hall was predominantly Caucasian men. So when we talk about diversity, part of the conversation is what are we doing to even bring the right candidates in the first place?
Right.